There is a bit of misconception out there or just lack of understanding. So right from the outset, a lot of times when we get introduced into a business owner or client, they don't really understand the difference between what an accountant does and what a CFO does.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Exit Is Now podcast with me, your host, Scott Snider. Got a couple of friends in town that I'd like to share an experience with you guys today. So I have Darren Michael in from FocusCFO, longtime CEPAs. In fact, you became a CEPA during COVID,
yeah.
During the first ever 2020, right? So the first ever virtual program. So what was that like?
Well, I didn't know any different.
Yeah, right. I guess so, right?
So it was. I had just joined Focus as well at that point.
Okay.
And so there wasn't a lot you can do during those days.
Right.
I was on Zoom calls 20 hours, 10 hours a day, meeting folks and starting to build my network in Charlotte. So doing this CEPA program was a great opportunity. It was a great opportunity to do it because there wasn't much else to do.
Yeah. But yeah, I always think back, I was looking like when you guys became CEPA, because you were 2018, Darren, and so you were like what? Were you in Chicago? You remember what class you went to?
Atlanta on the week of Valentine's Day. I will never forget that.
Was that good or bad?
That was not good.
Good time.
Yeah, Atlanta, man. I always forgot. So Atlanta was also kind of a special place in my heart too, or maybe a memorable place for me, because that was the first program we had to cancel during COVID. So I had gotten back from a family vacation, and that Atlanta program was always like in maybe, let's call it March. So that was one of the first we had to cancel in 2020. But so kind of an interesting, I think, bend to fractional CFO type services, what you guys do at FocusCFO. And when I say that, I talk about you guys are also certified exit planning advisors, where I found maybe some of the uniquest part was that you take this bend of how does that play into value, which I think is actually a critical path. Some of the most emerging advisors that I see in the EPI community are what we call these functional specialists. And so how do I take CFO and think about it in terms of value? How do I take marketing and talk about value, right? This whole mindset shift of income generation to value creation. So I think we have a lot to talk about. And so, and also I think we were talking a little bit at breakfast this morning, like EPI is experiencing a lot of growth as well. And so are you guys. So you guys, I was talking to my dad on a plane ride, knowing that you guys were coming in. He remembers when you guys were like 5 advisors, and now you guys got like, I think, nearly 150. And so there's a lot of growth there. And I will say, too, it is a real honor. You guys have really been committed, I think, to the exit planning community, to the work of certified exit planning advisors. And the reason you guys are in town, because you're our first formal official strategic partner in our new program that we debuted here at EPI and for the community. So thank you for that. I think
honored to do that.
A lot of big things.
Definitely our pleasure.
Yeah. So let's dive in to a little bit of backgrounds too. So for me, and I was talking to you guys a little bit pre-show too. I'm a business owner, so I'm probably also could be a client of yours, right? Because we don't have a fractional CFO.
Is he gonna be yours or mine?
I know you guys are gonna debate. But in all honesty, it's actually probably the role probably falls to my dad a little bit. I mean, that's one of the roles that he plays. But I don't know if he's as qualified for that role as a specialist, right? So it's something that Dad and I have tossed around as well. What I found interesting about you, Michael, is that you actually sold a business. So
yes.
You're an exited owner.
I'm an exited owner.
So talk to me about that. What is that like? And then does that help you interact with your owners a little bit better because you know how it goes?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, even forgetting about the exit for a moment, just having built a business basically from de novo. To the point where I was able to sell and going through a couple of different market cycles, I'm covered head to toe with battle scars.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I think at the end of the day, I made a few more right decisions than wrong decisions, but I made a lot of wrong decisions along the way. And so those battle scars those are the ones that are most interesting to business owners.
Yeah.
Hearing about the mistakes that you made and what you learned from it along the way. So that part of it I love, but then the exit itself was interesting. Now, my experience with an exit may be a little bit different than our typical client because my business was VC funded.
Oh, interesting.
So I had that extra component. It was a whole new world. I had a real professional board. Oh, I don't know how professional, but there was a real board involved in that. They were released from the VC community part of it. And then once we had made the strategic decision that it was time to do something strategic with the business, they actually brought in an investment banker in. And we went through a 2-year process of just figuring out, what do we want to do with the business? Do we want to invest more? Do we bring more partners? Do we want to be acquirers or be an acquiree of the business? And so we went through that process. It was informative. It was interesting. I also spent 2 years of my life with 2 full-time jobs, which was just freaking exhausting at the end of that. And at the end of the day, we decided that selling it to a strategic buyer was the right move for the business. And then, by that point, I was done, so I was ready to move out for that. But to me, the most interesting part of then getting my CEPA shortly after that was that I recognized that I had my exit path, my exit journey was one of many different options or journeys that you can take toward an exit. And with the CEPA, going through the CEPA program to help me is kind of fill out that perspective so I can talk to owners.
But no, I think that's interesting, right? To have that kind of experience now working with owners who are trying to build value and transition and doing it yourself. Like we laughed about doing a 3-hour show. We could probably do another hour show around what that whole journey was like. How long did you own that business then?
Probably end to end, 18 years.
18 years. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So there's a whole nother show there, right?
Exactly. Which is very unique for a VC funded business too, to be in it that long. Yeah.
Cool. So, and then Darren, what I was telling you pre-show too, what I thought was super interesting, you kind of always being in this, I would say always in the space of building companies, M&A work, advising business owners, but you had 2 like long-term stints, I think, 10 years and 19 years. And as a business owner, you heard me talking today at breakfast, Josh Koza has been here 8 years. So I'm like, I'm hoping for that 10-year mark. But I always think that, and maybe it's just me in today's world, I think there's a lot of people that, every 3 to 5 years are kind of changing positions. So talk to me about your journey into FocusCFO and given that 29 or something years where you spent between 2 different organizations.
Yeah, the thing that kept me engaged and excited about the organizations I was in is I was just continuously learning.
Yeah.
I started out, probably as a cost accountant. And
really?
And, by the time after those 8 years were up, I was literally running an operation, $40 million operation.
Yeah, it's big.
And then as I shifted over into the next career, I kind of started as a strategist, corporate strategist, and that led me up to a division CFO and later on a division CEO. So the challenge was in abundance. I mean, in the second career, I participated probably in over 30 acquisitions or divestments.
Wow.
So we went from $650 million in sales to $4 billion pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think that's interesting too, having that like big experience all the way down to like lower middle market companies that you serve today, and how vast that is. I mean, I think the biggest thing for complexity for me as an owner right now is scaling the business, putting the operations behind that scale. We have more people than we've ever had before, and it's actually, I think one of the biggest challenges for me too is challenging my leadership style. Like I'm really good with 10 to 20 people. Moving from like to 30 or 40 people, I'm saying, okay, what needs to change in my leadership? That's again probably another show for another day. So, but let's talk about growth. So we talked about us experiencing growth. So have you. Again, I was talking to my dad, and he goes, "Oh, it's so cool that they're coming in," because I remember when they were just like 5. But now you have what, 130, 150 advisors?
Probably close to 150. I was telling Paige earlier today, I think year to date, we've increased our associates by 40%.
Yeah, that's
which
crazy.
Is massive growth.
Right, that's massive growth.
Yeah.
So what challenges do you guys have now? I mean, because you have a unique role. You're both an area president, right? And then also from a corporate standpoint and like a director.
I'm director of marketing,
role.
right?
Yeah.
Right, and Darren runs our exit planning practice.
Right, exactly.
So we both have those kind of hats.
Yeah.
It is interesting. I haven't been there as long as some of the other folks have been, Darren, but in seeing the transition, FocusCFO has gone through the same kind of evolutionary steps that most businesses go through when they kind of hit that growth.
Yeah.
In fact, you mentioned EOS earlier.
Yeah, sure.
One of the first real levers that helped us start to scale the business is when somebody introduced EOS to Brad Martin, our founder. And it was a light bulb going off because he's the classic visionary in EOS terms.
Yeah, sure.
For him to run this growing business style that went from like a little practice in Columbus to a multi-state organization, that wasn't his DNA. So one of the most liberating things for Brad, and he talks about this all the time, was finding that integrator and bringing him in.
Yeah. So Darren, how long have you been at Focus? Because you're from Columbus, so we got North Carolina and Ohio here.
Yeah, I've been with Focus now for probably a little bit more than 8 years.
Okay.
And Focus growth the challenges are very similar to those that a business owner has.
Yeah.
We had to pivot our model. First and foremost, none of this growth would have been possible had we not had this foresight to pivot from CFOs doing business development. So we literally separate content delivery from business development, and that sort of enables us to have a continuous pipeline of business development without interrupting that. So otherwise what would typically happen is when a CFO got full, they stopped doing business development. And then when time became available, they started it back up, but they were sort of out of sight, out of mind, so there was always this length of time. So that was sort of the first thing we did. We pivoted. And then, we had a great strategy, but, only 15% of strategies get implemented. And so we realized that our current operating model wouldn't execute that strategy, and that's when we got into EOS, and we will face even more challenges associated with adapting our model to our scale. We're bringing in people to do roles that we've never had before, and it's working quite well. But we had to build a business model that was more scalable so it could handle the growth, and we will continuously have to evolve that way if we want to continue to pursue that rapid growth trajectory.
Do you have anybody on the FocusCFO team that's a EOS implementer?
We have several people
that are implementers.
But we actually prefer to have a pure EOS implementer, but there are some clients,
This is where I was going next with this question.
And so we typically don't, but we do have clients that self-implement.
Self-implement.
So
that's kind of what we do here at EPI.
We try to help them through that process.
Yeah, since you know it. Well, you live it yourself too, right? At
we
FocusCFO.
live it, and we have a couple folks that are continuously learning the process through EOS itself.
So I always laugh because the first EOS conference I went to, I kind of took like a lot of crap from the EOS community. And I'd say this, if anybody's listening that's an EOS implementer, I know you guys are going to laugh with me or you'll be calling me after. But I was talking to them and they're like, oh, you're not pure? And I'm like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not pure. But maybe I have a little bit, because I blend it, right? So Gino was certainly, without doubt, as a business owner, an influence for me. It was one of the first business books that my dad gave me, alongside Vern Harnish's. Well, not Scaling Up. I read the original Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. But then you have Dad's methodology, the value acceleration methodology. So you kind of bleed them all together. So for me, EOS for us at the time, I was looking for a system that I could teach my relatively young leadership team on how to be entrepreneurs, run companies, and things like that. And EOS was just a little bit more turnkey, I think, for our team. But we're not pure. We love the level 10 stuff. We use the scorecard, the vision traction organizer kind of thing. So the tools within the toolkit, if you will, have actually, to your point, allowed us to understand A, better data, B, have better conversations, and C, make quicker decisions. And so I think those three things for us, and by no means are we pure, and we're also self-implementers. So I don't have an implementer alongside us, but we were introduced actually by Kyle Danner to the system. He did that kind of vision day and everything for us, and kind of let us free, I guess. But nonetheless, it has been I think a big impact. I think of many others businesses as well.
So the challenge our clients that do self-implementing have, they hit that trough faster. And it's longer before they come out of that because sometimes you need someone to reset you on an annual basis. And so, because that's the one thing when you self-implement, you short-circuit the annual. Or you'll short-circuit the professional development necessary to sort of continue. So that's what we see. And oftentimes that's kind of where we say, okay, now it's time.
Yeah, right. Yeah. We have this like unique thing in our business, right? That is like my dad acts more today in like an advisory capacity. So Dad will come in. We have this company retreat coming up, right? Dad will come in and we'll run workshops throughout. So it's kind of an interesting thing though, because you know my dad pretty well. It's an interesting thing though because it's like on his own business. So we do, and you know us too. We use CEPAs in different capacities too. So we're actually working with a CEPA right now to go through the triggering event for our own business. I think it's going to be an interesting journey for Dad, right? Because it's, you know, calling your baby ugly, plus Dad's also a fellow CEPA, right? So it's interesting to me to see how this kind of will kind of play out. So I want to kind of get into this role of the CFO, and I think as an owner myself, when I think CFO, I think like a financial function. But what I like about FocusCFO is that you've taken this lean into, if you will, of that plus an approach to how does that create more value in the business. So why don't you both kind of from your different perspectives talk through the value approach to fractional CFO services. Why you want to start, and then we'll go over to Darren?
I'm happy to start.
Sure.
So, and you're right, there is a bit of misconception out there or just lack of understanding. So right from the outset, a lot of times when we get introduced into a business owner or client, they don't really understand the difference between what an accountant does and what a CFO does.
Yeah.
Right. And you'd seen one of the images that we had created to help communicate that, where accounting is essentially a backward-looking function, the rear view mirror, the rear window kind of function, where CFO is out the front window. You know, or I use the analogy: your CPA, your accountant, your bookkeeper are all in the back seat of that old-fashioned station wagon, looking out the back window.
So notice how we've evolved. We used to tell the story that it was like when you were growing up as a kid and you were in the Woody, the station wagon.
The Woody,
And the kids that were in that back seat had one perspective of the entire vacation.
Right.
That perspective was far better than anyone else, and that is they knew in infinite detail where you've been.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you know, there was always one of the older children sitting up front. You know, so they were kind of the co-pilot, the navigator.
I do remember the station wagon though, man. My buddy's mom used to pick us up from grade school in one. And she had a silver Chevy station wagon, and me and my buddy Steve would sit in the back, the very back seat, and look. It's always kind of weird when you pulled up to a stoplight.
Did it have the simulated wood panels?
No, it didn't have the wood panels. It was just like a silver bullet, you know. But it was always a little weird because you would pull up and there would be a car behind you, and you'd just be staring at the people. That was always kind of weird for me, I guess. But
the interesting part is that metaphor of the station wagon with the rear seat. When I talk to owners who don't understand what a CFO does, I use that metaphor, and you can see immediately the light goes off.
What about, so you mentioned the CPA, you know, taking a rear view, right? So how does the CPA feel about that, though? Like, so do you compete? We've had this conversation. Do you guys compete with the CPA? Because it's got to be kind of perhaps an awkward area for you, because they're typically really close to the owner. Also a numbers person, strategy person, perhaps the business advisor.
We don't compete with CPAs.
All right.
And let me explain why.
Sure.
We are not tax experts. We don't profess to be. And we, if anything, motivate our clients to spend more time tax planning. We are not auditors, nor do we profess to be. See, we're fractional. That means we have a limited amount of time a week to spend with the client. We choose to spend more strategic our time on more strategic actions that are forward-looking. So we really don't. As a matter of fact, most CPAs will tell you the client becomes a more profitable client for them after they've engaged with FocusCFO, because two things happen. The tax returns become a lot easier to prepare because things are in a better order. And secondly, the client finally has time to do tax planning, which is the CPA's value-added service.
Sure.
And so I think that's a misnomer. We don't compete.
One of probably the top referral partners we have are CPAs,
That's
bankers,
interesting.
and financial advisors.
So is so is it from the owner's perspective where they feel like I already have a CPA and controller? Why do I need you guys? It's really that.
It's just
that's
being
happening.
uninformed.
Well, it's no different than exit strategy used to be, right? Where
Or there are still some niche CPAs that will say to the owner, "Oh, I could do that for you."
yeah, well, yeah, there's a little bit of
and
that.
we always say, "Hey, I can't agree or disagree with them, but here's the scenario. Let me paint the picture for you." We have, on average, CFOs that have been CFOs with 25 years experience.
Right.
They are not looking at what a CFO does. They were in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
They've
Right.
got the bumps,
Yeah.
bruises
Yeah.
to account for it. Now, I can't be sure that your CPA has that same level of experience there. And that's what you have to find out.
Yeah.
We talk about three uniques, what makes us
Okay.
unique, and one of them is, and it refers directly to this, our CFOs have, as Darren said, decades of experience working in businesses, not decades of experience working for businesses.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference because we have an operational nature to it as well. The CPA just knows you from your financial statements,
Sure.
right,
Sure,
and your
sure,
taxes. That's it. That's essentially it.
So this might be, it just came to mind, but it might be going a little too forward, but you want to ask it now. So because you mentioned we're fractional. So is there ever a point where you like the owner outgrows you, where they need a full-time CFO? Do you guys help them find that person then?
Yeah, that's a success story for us.
That would be an ultimate goal, I think, for you guys.
Well,
right?
there's
That they've
two.
scaled so much.
Two, they get big enough where they need a full-time CFO, and we help them get there. Success story.
Right.
Or we get them to a point where they want to having an exit transaction. And those are both success stories for us.
Yeah, we don't want to work with a client more than 2.5 days a week.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
So we don't want our fractional service to extend beyond 50%.
Okay.
To
Why
put-
is that?
Because that's the point of which it's too overwhelming for our Encore career CFOs.
Right. Yeah.
And there probably is a legitimate need on that customer's perspective for more.
Right.
And so rather than us saying we can't give you more, we say maybe this is the time. And we've actually had, we have a client that was over 300 million in sales, and they finally, after 3 years of being over 300, hired a CFO, but they then took the fractional CFO and made them a board member.
Yeah,
Because
fair.
that was that relationship, that trust, that advisory relationship that the CFO had with them that they wanted to continue.
Is that a competitive edge for you guys, like in against your competitors? This focus on value. So the firms start that way with a focus on, okay, this is how these services equate to the overall value of your company, or is that something that, because you guys, if you guys have 130, 150 CEPAs over 20 years of being around, or advisors over 20 years of being around, I would say 25, 30 of them are certified exit planning advisors. So taking this exit focus, I just find it kind of unique. Has that always been the focus of the firm, or is that something that has built?
So it probably wasn't day one.
Yeah.
To be
Yeah, that's
brutally
fair. No,
honest
that's
with
fair.
you, when we started in 2001, I think we could best be characterized as a turnaround firm.
Okay.
Most of the clients we had were in the bottom of our pyramid, which is where their health, they were unhealthy. But then we had to pivot. We had to put a strategy together because as we got them healthy, every time a business is healthy, you know what they want to do. They want to grow.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And so then we brought in the growth, and the growth naturally led us to value because that is that next step after you grow your business. You start saying, well, now how do I monetize this either for me or for Junior or
Right.
what's my next step?
Yeah.
And then we finally formalized that years ago. And you've seen our value pyramid.
Absolutely,
'Cause
yeah.
there's a reason why value is the top level of that pyramid. And it aligns perfectly with the value acceleration methodology that you have. I mean, it's basically right side by side.
Yeah, I think that, you heard me kind of earlier in the show, I think that regardless of what type of advisor, we're actually working on a white paper where we're talking about this large ecosystem. Because I think a lot of people, owners, and even advisors still today, even a more mature profession of exit planning, still think that core team. And so you think CPA, you think wealth advisor, attorney, folks like that. But if we can get everybody that's surrounded the owner, their own leadership team included, thinking about not just income generation, but value creation, I think it pushes the whole thing forward. So I just think it's kind of an interesting bend. So I want to rewind a bit because I want to know really, okay, I'm sitting here as an owner. What kind of feelings do I have when I'm feeling like, hey, I got to bring you in? Or is it really those core advisors saying, hey, Scott, I think that you need these services? But I want to save that for after the break.
Okay.
So keep that in mind, and we'll see you just in a brief couple minutes.
The Exit Planning Institute is the authority in exit planning. With its award-winning process, the Value Acceleration methodology provides deep insights into how to help business owners create more significant companies while blending and aligning their business, personal, and financial goals. EPI brings together the world's most elite exit planning advisors to form the EPI community. The EPI community represents over 15,000 professional advisors worldwide, including its 5,000 certified exit planning advisors. These advisors include financial advisors, growth consultants, CPAs, attorneys, M&A advisors, amongst others, who come together to expand their knowledge, create and innovate, network and relationship build, grow their practices, and better attract and engage business owner clients. Join EPI today and gain access to the community, content, courses, credential, and conference that you as the professional advisor need in order to harness the opportunity with small to lower middle market business owners who strive to grow a company of significance, thus having a highly valuable and transferable company. Follow the Exit Planning Institute on LinkedIn and visit earncepa.com to learn more about the community leading the exit planning profession.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Exit is Now podcast. So before the break, we actually kind of fast forward a little bit, and we were talking about what the relationship kind of looks like, and then the ultimate goal, which is to either A, exit and have a great, significant, successful exit, or move into a place where they're bringing on a full-time CFO because they need that. They kind of need that. They need that commitment. But I want to talk about what it looks like. So we talked about you guys get referred into by advisors. But if I'm an owner and I'm sitting on the leadership team, can you talk to me what kind of feeling I'm getting when I'm feeling like, there's something missing in my business? Like, how do I know? Maybe the better question, and maybe direct, is how do I know when I need you guys? At a revenue threshold? Is there a pain point, a desire?
It's pain points.
Okay.
Because revenue is actually fairly irrelevant to that. There's three main pain points, and obviously there's a lot of detail behind that. One is kind of what you guys are experiencing right now. We're growing.
Yep.
And they're starting to feel the pain of, we're now X $1 million business,
right,
but we're still operating and we still have the infrastructure and the systems and the processes and the people of half our size or a quarter of that size. And they're falling over the front of their skis, metaphorically.
Yeah.
That's one. Another one is the opposite. The business is, there has some concerns about how the business is performing currently. They're bleeding cash. Their cash flow is not great. They don't know where it's going, et cetera. And are all my business lines, all my product lines really the things I should be doing, right? Things like that. So there's concerns about cash flow and performance of the business is a second pain point. Then the third one is if they actually can pick their heads up out of the sand long enough and go, where am I going with this business? Am I going to actually be able to sell it? Am I actually going to be able to retire from it? Whatever. So sometimes that's the concern. But a lot of times, we're getting more business owners reaching out to us directly now as a result of that. But predominantly, they're coming in as leads are coming in as referrals from their banker, their CPA, maybe their wealth advisor, who are recognizing that the owner is suffering or experiencing these pains.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So what does that look like? So I get in there with you guys, and do you guys do? So obviously, I'm going to lean into the value acceleration methodology a little bit. We know that when you start with a value growth advisor, they're going to do some type of triggering event engagement. I'm assuming you guys have one for the fractional CFO stuff as well? Is that what's the kickoff to the engagement?
We're typically doing an assessment of the business, and it's across all layers, again, of our value pyramid. How's their foundation, their accounting processes, all their other processes of the business. How they're doing from a health side, to actually understand the numbers behind their business, what's driving it, forecasts, et cetera. And then assuming that's all running, do they have a growth strategy? Do they know, both operationally and from a financial perspective, do they have what it needs to grow? And then ultimately it's, the top is the value perspective. Are they growing the value of the business in a way that an outside person would look at the business?
So then talk to me about how that might overlay then with what we would call at EPI, this value growth advisor, right? So somebody like my dad, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, Darren, again, you know my dad pretty well, being a fellow Ohioan here, I guess. And so my dad, I would say my dad takes a wide stroke around business growth. So I think you guys play a function in that. So how do you come along a lot of these certified exit planning advisors, I suppose, that are value growth advisors, kind of like my dad or Sean Hutchinson, that are really taking a broad stroke to this is how we go through value acceleration?
Yeah, and so, going back for a minute to the business analysis, that really is the equivalent of the triggering event.
Okay.
And for business owners that are our clients, they get to experience that once a year. And we call it our climb the mountain touch point.
Yeah, I like this. Is this your marketing geniusy that's here?
We ran with it. The concept was there, but yeah.
So I honestly, funny side story real quick. I was like just doing my research, thinking about cool things to talk about, and I noticed on your bio first, it's like you're the Sherpa or whatever you guys call it, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, I wonder if that's a specific role for Darren. Like, is that Darren's thing? And I noticed it said on yours, and then as I looked through other people, you guys are all this guiding light for the, this guide for the business owner. Because I really wanted to come in and be like, okay, out of all the 100-something advisors you have at FocusCFO, Darren's your Sherpa. Please tell me about that. But then I realized all you guys are Sherpas, so we're all guiding owners on this mountain climb. I like it. I really do like it because I think it honestly is a fun way to describe what the owner's getting into.
Yeah. And there's two aspects. One, obviously, we are a guide. The top of the mountain is obviously the transaction, the event.
Sure.
But we're guides in helping them get up there. And it's not just necessarily the financial side. It's and since we've all been experienced, we've all been on this climb already. So we're doing it from the first time. So we're kind of leading from the front a little bit from that perspective. But it's there's the aspect of it that we're on the climb with them.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? We're to your point, you mentioned embedded. Yeah. We're on that climb for however long that value growth period is, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, whatever. We're side by side on the field with them, in it for the duration.
And sometimes we're the ones that have to say uncle to them.
Yeah.
Because part of what we do is we want to check, are we going fast enough? Okay, but wait a minute now. If we want to meet this objective by this time frame, we need to pick up the speed. So you want to go a little harder, or you want to lighten up. And sometimes you're like, okay, we need to slow down because of this. You're outgrowing your ability to do this, and so that's the kind of advice. But we can only provide that insight because we're with them once a week.
Yeah, because you're embedded. Yeah,
or at least
it's such a great word to use.
Yeah, at least once a week. Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys are coming in once a week to the owner's company in most scenarios? What's like a typical scenario? And are you meeting, I guess for me, are you going to meet with my leadership team too, or are you just really meeting with the owners? What does that look like?
Both.
Yeah.
That's why we're embedded.
Yep.
So I'll give you kind of a typical exit planning routine. Yeah. So we have the CFO that's in there, let's say once a week. And during that time frame, one of those sessions will literally be a full meeting where everyone is together. And then as you go through the week, you may start the day talking with the owner, and you probably will end the day talking to the owner. But in between that, you'll be working with the management team because they have deliverables for that next meeting that you're helping them accomplish, you're helping them achieve. And in some cases, you're helping coach them into learning a new skill. And so I'll come in sort of as that advisor only twice a month. So one is typically to do some kind of personal development teaching, a skill teaching. And then the next one will be in that meeting where we all get together to say how we're doing so that we can really nail that plan, do, check, act.
Yeah, I think that you got me, because you also talked about continuing. One of the notes I wrote down for you guys, you said, I think it was you that said continuous learning, right? Yeah. And so for a guy that owns a company, I was telling you guys earlier too, the average age of the leadership team is 31 and a half. So at almost 40 years old, I'm the old guy. But I'm thinking about that education, though, that educational component where could we not only be more knowledgeable about our own business, but could we actually be learning and growing as well as executives and business leaders? I think that's kind of struck me with that. That's an interesting component, the educational part. We're all learning and growing together.
You just hit 2 of our 4 core values, being Sherpas, both to our clients and internally, and continuous learners.
Yeah,
you have to think of it this way, Scott. As a leader, you have a lot of responsibilities, but one of them is to be the best you can be. Mm-hmm. And you can't be the best you can be unless you're constantly working towards and working on a better you.
That's fair. Absolutely fair. Do you think that most owners in your scenarios struggle with understanding their numbers? I can tell you it's one of my earliest business lessons from my dad, right, was he used to, honestly, and if Dad's listening right now, he'll laugh, he used to literally ride my ass about this. I'd come and I'd have all these visionary type ideas. Dad, we're doing this. Customer engagement is this. Here's this. He said, and he would ask me something about the P&L, and I wouldn't have it as thought out, or I'd be completely missing it. And he goes, you run the business by the numbers. All that stuff's good, but know the numbers. And I can, and this dates back. He actually feels bad about this, so if he is listening, he's going to say, why did you talk about that? And I'll probably take him out for a cigar and a beer later, but I'm going to tell the story anyways, because we just talked about this. One of the things he said, and this dates all the way back to my landscaping company too, I could probably use you guys there, is I would always misestimate jobs. And that's probably because I was just young and naive and I had no idea, right? Because I was a guy that just threw a lawnmower in the back of a pickup truck. Then finally, 5-6 years into it, was actually had some pretty robust accounts. But I would always, like, the mulch would get me all the time. I'd estimate 200 yards and it'd be 300. So I'd totally just eat it on the last 100. And it was in the EPI early days. We said, son, all of this is great, but you've yet to hit a budget in your 4-year stint here. And I said, all right. And as a competitor, if I wasn't as competitive, it probably would have hurt my feelings more. But I said, you know what? You're right. And I'm gonna get with it. And the next year I hit the numbers. And then we've hit the numbers every time since. But I've also surrounded myself with other people. But as a young business owner, it was always a hard time. What are the numbers telling me? And so do you think that's a common thing for many owners? They're really good at their trade.
Extremely common.
Okay.
So it's rare that you have a business owner that really fully has a grasp over all their numbers and know what their core key metrics are.
Right.
More often than not, they look at financial statements and their eyes glaze over, and they may know a couple things. I mean, one great story. I had a construction company as a client. When I first met with them, I asked the owner about his numbers, and he was able to, rattle off to me what his gross margins were on his project. I'm like, that's great. How about net? What do you actually make in profitability? He's like, I have no idea. I'm like, well then, how do you know you can actually afford to bring us on?
Right.
And he looked at me without batting an eye, and he said, all I know is I can't afford not to bring you on.
Yeah, so he had more of a gut feeling where he's like, I think I need you guys here.
He goes, no, I definitely need you here.
And they really fall into 3 categories.
Okay.
And the last category is incredibly rare. But you have the business owners that just know their sales.
Okay, yeah.
Because they're practitioners.
Sure.
They are great at what they do. And to them, whatever problems they have, they can make it up with sales, okay?
I totally understand.
And then you have that middle group, which will be those that self-profess that they know everything about their numbers. And they do. They have at least made the transition from sales, sometimes to gross margin, and sometimes to profit. But where they have this weakness at is they can't apply it to what they should do next about it.
I totally understand.
And that's that third one, which is rare. The third one is rare, and that's the one that's able to say, this is where I'm at, and this is what I need to do to be able to do that. Because oftentimes the owner doesn't understand the levers they can pull. And by the way, in fairness to all business owners, these levers are changing rather dramatically, especially in the past 5 years. We've had inflation. We never had inflation.
Yeah, that's true.
We've had supply chain disruptions. We've never had that.
I can imagine, Darren, like in a more complex business, like a manufacturing company, how that might. Because I'm trying to compare it to my own business, which I'm probably sound like one of your clients, like super naive right now. Like I feel like my business is kind of simplistic. But I can only imagine, like in a large manufacturing company where you have stuff like they're talking. I just got me going when you think of these like levers that you could pull. There's just a lot going on there.
It doesn't even have to be that complex. You could have been a distributor of equipment.
Yeah,
You're
right.
used to getting equipment in so many days, so your contracts are, told Mike I'd sell it to him for $2 million.
Yeah.
Comes in, I pay $2.2 million.
Yeah.
My contracts aren't even worded such that I can charge them any more than $2 million. And by the way, there's a penalty if I don't sell it to them.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
So changing the dynamics, based on, hey, I'll the quote's today, but it's only good for 10 days.
Is that something that you guys were looking at too? Kind of those like that language that's in some of these things that might
Absolutely.
like hold them into because that's a hell of an example, right? Where I bought it for. Well, I told you I'd sell it to you for $2 million, but it actually came in at 2.2. Now I'm kind of screwed.
I've had clients with exactly that problem along the way. And probably the biggest thing, even if they know their numbers to a certain extent, what they don't understand is the concept of cash flow and cash flow management. So they may be growing well, and they're driving themselves out of business because they have I've had plenty of clients like this, had a huge liquidity crunch, and they almost went belly up because of that. Even though their business top line sales were growing, they didn't know where more cash was going out than coming in. All of a sudden, they couldn't pay vendors. And then to Darren's point, lately over the last couple of years, especially if you have larger customers, they're extending the terms that they were going to pay you for.
Yeah.
Your suppliers are still on pretty tight margins as far as what they want to get paid. You pay them, and most business owners only understand cash flow from what's in my checking account at the end of the week.
Exactly, right.
And that's a big problem in any kind of business where you have inventory and supplies coming in and turning stuff over.
It's interesting.
It worked at the early age.
Sure.
Right.
It did. And then later on, we stopped even worrying about it because it wasn't a problem.
Right.
But where we get into trouble is, and this is especially true in the Midwest. See, in the Midwest, for the most part, we are price buyers. So businesses grow in the Midwest at a much faster rate than they grow in the Southeast, for example, or in the South. You'll look at business growth in Central Ohio, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
How quickly they grow and the rate. But they're growing outside of their core business. And that portfolio of their cost structure is very different. They're looking at that old gross margin.
Yeah.
And the gross margin, looks good. But they got twice as many people to service the account. They've got more people in the office dedicated to account. And so before you know it, they've doubled in size and they have less cash flow
Exactly.
than they
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Though I do
it's
feel like I need
interesting.
to defend the Southeast now.
Yeah, right? Hey, what are you thinking here?
What is it, in Ohio we know more?
Yeah, they start
What?
ganging up on them a little bit. But
Where's the biggest growth in the country right now?
I'm just
Sorry.
looking at the business statistics.
So there's another thing that I think is unique to you guys, and maybe it's the exit planning that you guys have any as certified exit planning advisors, and that's this kind of personal touch that you give. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about the personal side of what we're doing because we just spent another 20 minutes kind of talking about business, but I want to talk about how you actually change lives. So we'll be back just in a quick minute, and we'll dive into that.
For business owners, by a business owner. Walking to Destiny is your essential resource for understanding what makes your business highly profitable and significant. It becomes a business owner's handbook to know how to rapidly grow value and ultimately unlock the personal wealth trapped in business. Exit Planning Institute CEO Christopher Snider demonstrates how strategic exit planning will help you achieve improvements today while positioning you to build wealth for generations. Secure your success along other value creators. Discover, prepare, and decide what your walk to destiny will ultimately be. If executed correctly, these strategies can grow a business owner's wealth by 10 times. Walking to Destiny, the second edition, the 11 actions an owner must take to rapidly grow value and unlock wealth. Get your copy today at www.walkingtodestiny.com.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast. So a couple of things. We talked a lot about the business side, but there's also a unique thing that I found with you guys is that you have this slogan, if you will, really right on the front page of the website that also addresses, I think, a much more personal side. And it says, freedom to change lives. So to me, that's much more than the business side. We're really holistic, and maybe that's the certified exit planning advisor in you as well. But talk to me about what that means.
So, and as Darren said, a lot of us, we have been business owners ourselves.
Yeah.
We've been through this. And, I think we're fortunate enough that we've had some good exits in our past. But Brad, our founder, talks about how he originally started the business. As I didn't mind this. He was a CFO in a mid-level public company. And their growth strategy was doing a lot of acquisitions like Darren was doing in his prior life. And he would be the point person working with the owners, and it was typically with smaller businesses in that industry. And he was finding more and more is that those owners were wholly unprepared, right, to be acquired. And they were, CEPA, they were leaving tons of money on the table. He had a lot of respect for them, and everything that, all the risks they took and blood, sweat, and tears, and we're not getting what they should have been getting out of the business.
Sure.
So that was kind of his start for us. And that's really kind of the genesis behind freedom to change lives at this point.
Yeah, no, I think that was, again, doing the research. I guess I never noticed that on your website, and it struck me. And I said, well, that's a pretty deep and powerful statement, is that we're going beyond just creating a healthy company. Mm-hmm. We're going to give you the freedom. We're going to have the freedom to change lives.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, that's the way our model was built.
Yeah.
This is an organization that is 95% built on folks that this is their encore career.
Right.
Right.
And so they are conscientiously choosing to do something that they're passionate about doing. Mm-hmm. And so the model is built around helping owners achieve that freedom.
Yeah, no, that's just the encore career. Yeah.
And if they don't share that passion, they're not joining us in the first place.
Right.
So it's a self-fulfilling value.
Yeah. So when you're onboarding new folks, like that's something that you're looking for too.
Right. So you notice kind of that's our proposition to owners.
Yeah.
If you look at our mission statement, which aligns perfectly with EPI, which is to help owners build sustainable, transferable value in their businesses.
So I want to talk to you in kind of closing where we're heading. It's something that's top of mind for me. A month or so ago, we debuted the State of Owner Readiness Survey results in the state of Minnesota. And the results are, honestly, it was like a deep breath. I was telling you guys off air during the break, it was like a deep breath for me because it showcases the guys like you that are out there in the market working with business owners and their teams that we're doing something right and we're moving that needle. Mm-hmm. And the statistic that perhaps many of our listeners have heard over the last couple of episodes that really sticks out to me is that we asked the owner, to what level have you concentrated on your exit strategy? And it's like some attention, little attention, no attention. But one of the things that they can answer is top priority. And in 2017, in the state of Minnesota, only 6% of owners said, it's my top priority. This year, 28% of owners said it's their top priority. So nearly a third of owners within our surveyed group said that exit strategy was their top priority. So we were having some kind of talk over, and I want you guys to kind of share that insight that I think it's also due. Generally, I think owners are just more aware, right? If you looked over the last 10 years, there's podcasts like this, there's ebooks, there's white papers, there's, probably 50 times more CEPAs out in the marketplace. There's guys like you that have a kind of a functional expertise that also talk about value and changing lives. There's so much going on in the market. But I also think is that the age demographic is going down. You said, Darren, the new 65 is 55 or something like that?
Absolutely. I think for baby boomers, 75 was the new 65. For the generations after them, everything points towards, for them, 55 is the new 65. And what I mean by that is baby boomers ran their business for 20, 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
This next generation has a timer. That egg beater timer is going off 10, 15 years at the most. And that creates a very different dynamic. If I only have half the time to run that company, That's half the time to create the wealth.
Yeah.
There's less of a probability that I can give this business to Junior now. I'm going to have to sell it. And if I'm going to have to sell it, I'm going to have to make it more valuable. And so that sales transaction for them, they have a bigger awareness because the point is happening sooner after their start date than it has in history. So I think that awareness is becoming out of necessity more than anything.
Do you guys find that they're like more educated? So I think that one of the reasons we're ranking high in our surveys as of recent is because I do believe those people 36 to 56 years old, a little bit more open-minded to maybe what you're saying is, how do I actually grow value in my company? How do I balance my life or blend my life a little bit? Do you feel like that they're a more educated generation when it comes to the stuff that we're teaching?
Well, they're definitely more educated about it, but there is definitely a generational mind shift change.
Yeah.
I mean, Darren and I have kids that are all, in their 30s or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I know. Yeah. Oh, mine are in their 30s. But they very much embody or have in their core now is that whole FIRE mentality. Financially independent, retire early. That is in their mindset.
Right.
And retire early doesn't mean toes up on the beach.
Yeah.
It means I want to move on to my next chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do have I would say it's the same type of thing, right? We're of that generation myself. I think that really those are the boomerang owners where they're going to hang out for 10 years and every almost decade they're doing something new,
different,
right?
Yep.
They're doing something different.
Yep.
So I do think that's interesting.
Versus the boomers, right, who
Yeah.
are hanging on to their businesses forever because it kind of defined them.
No, I'll give you a great example. We had a husband and a wife that bought a company, and we worked with them to transition the company to the two sons. But the sons immediately said, no, we want to start exit planning now.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And literally 2.5 years later, we moved that company to an ESOP because at the end of the day, for them to protect the employees and make sure the company stayed in the geography it was in, they had no choice but to do an ESOP. So they just did the ESOP now.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. It's an interesting kind of applying it to our own business too, right? Because
it is.
How are you, again, like we were talking even before the show, right? Me and Dad, 51%, 49%, two different generations, and then two different chapters in life or phases in life where he's approaching 65 and I'm approaching 40. I'd rather take the money that we're earning in the business, invest back in the business, and keep it growing. Where Dad's like, let's diversify a little bit. So and then you just got me thinking about it, Darren, when you talk about ESOPs, because we have hopefully you guys experienced today a pretty tight group of folks here. They're all very passionate individuals, and I would say everybody has a spirit of entrepreneurship in them. So we've had a few of our employees even express equity. How do I own something like the Exit Planning Institute? I want to get in on this, and I'm passionate about the purpose and the vision. So, nonetheless, very interesting.
I mean, two good examples of clients I had recently. One is a home builder we have, and the daughter is now taking over from the father, running it. They didn't, when the father was running the business, they didn't need us. He was just one of those owners that just had full command over the financials of his business. His daughter is not that way. So we were brought in for two reasons. One, help them construct the transition and the structural aspects behind it. But two, to be the right-hand person.
Well, it's the education and the mentorship again.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge benefit.
Yeah. I just brought on a new client just yesterday. Husband and wife team. They're 67, both of them. They're in, all they want to talk about is growth mode.
Yeah.
How we want to grow this business and take it up. I can't even engage them in a conversation about exit planning because it's defining them. They have no interest in doing that. We'll have to kind of slowly get in behind
Change that mentality there. So.
So we have a client that at the time was 82. And every time we would sit down, he says, yeah. 10 years from now when I get ready to retire.
10 years.
And I would
92.
look at the CFO, I was like, really, dude?
Yeah, like, come on, man.
We're not making progress yet. So luckily after 36 months, we did get him to transition the business to the son.
Yeah, see? That's always interesting. There's always a story that my dad tells at CEPA, right, where he came in back in his Aspire management days, and the guy was like 75.
Yeah.
And my dad was kind of sitting at the conference room, not like, not like shouting it out to everybody, but talking openly about exit. And he goes, Chris, you got to quiet down. I don't want people to know I'm exiting. And my dad's like, dude, you're 75. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, your customers love your product. Right. Your employees love working here, but they're all wondering what's going to go on because you are the business. They would like it to actually continue because they love this place. So you should actually talk more about it because you actually probably retain more customers and retain more great employees if they just knew what was going on. So nonetheless, gentlemen, that is all the time that we have today. So I appreciate you coming in and hanging out with us. We got a whole nother day here together, and dinner tonight. So we will continue the conversations. Please subscribe, listen, and leave a review on all of your podcast platforms. We'll see you next time on Exit is Now.